Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie authors on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
And I'm Christina Catane, and I write Christian fantasy.
Welcome to everybody watching live, and hello to everybody listening later. We do make this podcast available everywhere that you can find any podcast. And we are also live every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So if you have the chance to come over and chat with us, we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody who listens to the podcast. And if you like and subscribe, that would be such a blessing to us. And if you love what we do, tell a friend. If you hate what we do, tell everyone you know, because we could really use the publicity. Yeah. So we are down a host today, but that's just because Jen is still being holly jolly and is still doing the family gig and wasn't able to do New Year's Adam with us. So welcome, Tina, to New Year's Adam. How have you been? What's up?
Oh, I have just been enjoying my granddaughter, spending a lot of time with her. And so, like, she was born on November 4th, and my daughter's been coming over a lot. And, like, she wanted to make Christmas cookies.
The baby?
No, my daughter.
Oh.
So she came to my house to make Christmas cookies so I could hold the baby while she made Christmas cookies, basically. And so she did that twice because we had two different family Christmas things to go to. And she wanted the cookies to be fresh each time. And then my son-in-law had to have his appendix out, and she was at the hospital all day with him. So I went over there and held the baby. So I just been like totally absorbed with Eliana. And Athena spent a week here with us too. So I had both granddaughters here a lot. And so I set up this countdown deal on Amazon. And you can do it like for 5 days. You can mark your book down 5 days out of I think it's the quarter.
So you like put it on sale, you're saying?
Yeah. So like you put it on a countdown deal, and you either you mark it down, or you put it free. I think I might have put it free. And then Amazon will promote it for those 5 days as part of one of their countdown deals. I forgot that I had even done it.
Oh.
Until I was reading somebody's post in the 20 books page, and they said, "Oh, I sold 20 books this month. I'm so happy." And I thought, gee, I wonder how many books I sold this month. So I opened up my KDP, and I had sold 315 books
Wow.
in the month of December. And I was like, what is going on? Because that is not anywhere near what I usually do. So.
And you didn't immediately remember that you had done the countdown deal?
No. And but then the amount of money I made can match. And I was like, oh yeah, I think it was because it was free. And then I looked at the graph, and I had been like 690 something in the entire Kindle store.
Wow.
For that 5-day period. Like right around there. Like it bounced around, but.
Well, dang, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, I wish I would have been paying attention, because I bet in my categories I was probably number 1 if I made it that high. Because I've been number 1 in my categories before, and I did not make it that high in the whole Kindle store. So
wow.
I'd have been paying attention. I'm terrible at marketing. I just do stuff, and I didn't remember I did it.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that marketing has been kind of a tough nut for us to crack, although Jen is still holding her cards pretty close to her vest. She's apparently taken a pretty serious swing at marketing this last quarter of 2022. So I can't wait till she has some results for us. But
yeah,
I have not at all. I mean, that's not about me, but yeah, my marketing strategy is like, there is none. Yeah.
I mean, I just saw the thing and I was like, oh, this could be fun. So
yeah.
I did it. Like there was not a lot of thought behind it. I just did it.
Well, I know. And it's really an interesting challenge as an independent publisher of your own books, is balancing the time you spend actually creating new work and the time you spend trying to sell what you have already published, and trying to figure out how much time to spend doing each activity is very much a challenge every indie has to grapple with.
Yeah.
And, I know next week the plan is for us to talk about what 2023 holds for each of our writing careers. And have you given any thought yet as to that component, as far as what is going to be the balance of marketing versus creating new content? Have you thought about that at all
A
yet?
little bit. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know that I've made any decisions, but I have thought about it.
Hmm.
I have options.
I know, because you're going to have your series done next year,
Yeah,
presumably,
hopefully
right?
pretty close to the first of the year.
Yeah.
I'll have it. Well, it's probably going to be more like March because I still need, like it still has to go to the editor and all that once I finish it. So
All
I'm not
right.
trying. I'm trying to learn not to be in a hurry.
Yeah.
That's one of my things. Is like I just want to get it done, and then I don't take the time to make sure it's right. So what's going on with you? What have you been up to?
Oh, goodness. I was going to look up a Stoic quote and a Bible thing. And then I'm like, oh, no, because I have stuff to say. And then as I sit here, I think, what stuff did I have to say?
Mm,
But now I remember. So thanks for helping me verbally stall. I am just in general super happy to kind of be back on the writing bandwagon, or having repicked up the writing habit or hobby or whatever you want to say. Every day that I do not have a shift at work, I am in the sprint room that you created for our National Novel Writing Month
yeah, I've noticed that.
accountability. Yeah. And it has been really good to just be committing those 2 hours every day to my writing career, and the uh, body doubling, I guess, of just another person showing up to be productive at the same time is so helpful. And it's really interesting that that even has a name.
Yeah,
I
my
think I've talked about it before on here, right?
yeah, my son has ADHD, and like if he needs to get something done, like clean his room or whatever, if I just go in there and sit on
Yep.
his chair and just talk to him while he does it, he can get it done. But if he's by himself, he can't get it done.
I know, and the weirdest thing is, I really just need the person there. And I remember begging my little sister, "Just come and be in my room." And I'm like, "My room is comfortable. My bed is comfortable. Lay on my bed and look at your book or whatever." And I did not realize that that was like not that was a thing. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
never could explain what it was about it. It's not like I was asking her to help me clean my room or to have anything to do with cleaning my room, but it's just having that other person present. And so
yeah,
I guess you could say that I'm offering that for anybody who's listening. If you want to go join our Facebook group, listeners of the Christian Indie Writers podcast, again, it's on days that I'm not scheduled to work. I do work in the restaurant industry, so sometimes I do work a lunch shift. But when I'm not working, from 10 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern, I will be having that sprint room open.
hmm,
And I do 20-minute sprints with a 10-minute break. And it's just, I mean, you don't have to be writing. My commitment personally is that those 2 hours, I am thinking about my writing career, like whatever that looks like, because I can't have a routine. I would rather like die right now than
mm,
commit to having a routine. Oh, from 10 to 10:20, I'm going to do this every day. And from 10:30 to 10:50, I'm going to do this every day. No, but I have my manuscript open and I think about all of the things related to being a writer. And to me, that's doing my part to move things forward. And it's so far so good. I've really been enjoying that time. So anybody who wants to be a part of that, step
mm.
right up and don't be shy.
And really, anybody can go in there at any time.
Yeah.
And say who wants to come in here and sprint. If it's in the middle of the night, you can do it. This is just like the scheduled time that Jamie will be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of my favorite things is the 10-minute breaks, because then it gives me an opportunity to find out what people are working on and offer them a little bit of encouragement, or we can puzzle through issues. And sometimes we just tell ridiculous stories. So it's a good little bit of a social time too. So
Yeah.
happy to offer that to our community. Anybody who wants. And yeah, if you want to go in there and say, "Hey everyone, I was thinking about doing a sprint." Go for it. And maybe other little study committed time blocks will open up too, based on
Right.
what
Because
people
not
are willing.
everybody has 10 to 12
Right.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people have, day jobs or whatever. And
Right.
yeah. Okay, so I think that does it for what's up. We are still praying for Rhonda and Jen. We hope you're having a beautiful day. But the two of us are here to talk about story structure in the book of Job. So,
Who picked this
Tina,
anyway?
yeah. We do want suggestions for podcast episode topics, but this one we thought of because the last time we were together, we talked about the Christmas story and how it has elements of story in it and what it can teach us about writing. And so we thought, well, Job, and let me just say, Tina, before we get into it, I feel like the Old Testament is just made for this sort of discussion, because it really does seem like there's just so many like stories. You know what I mean? Like, once
Yeah.
upon a time, there was a man named Samson. Once upon a time, there was a woman who could not have a child. Once upon a time, and the New
Hmm.
Testament is just not really written that way. The New Testament is like,
Well, yeah, they're letters
there,
mostly.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that we could probably expand the series, but Job in particular, like, seriously, do you remember who talked about this, or like why? Do you remember the inspiration behind this
I
idea?
think it was you that said, let's
Me.
do Job. But I said, let's do another story in the Bible because
Mm,
there we had a lot of ideas of what we could do, but we didn't want to do any of them without Jen.
yeah,
And
right.
so that's why we kind of fell back onto this as this a conversation we were willing to have without her, even though she would have made it better. But
Yes, yes.
um and then you said, well, let's do Job. So I really think the first thing we need to talk about is genre.
Hmm.
Like, what
Oh man.
genre do you think?
What do you call those stories that are usually told, telenovela? Oh, all of my children have died. Oh, all of
Hmm.
my cattle have died. Like, I mean, it's seriously depressing to me. I mean, when we start to talk about this, like, the whole book of Job is just like the depressingness of it. And then it has like that ecclesiastical heaped onto it of just like, well, I'm God. And so this is how things are. So tough nails for you or whatever. And then
Mhm.
everybody wants to say that it kind of like has a happy ending because, spoiler alert, Job is like restored and then some. But it's like, to me, that's not happy. Like, that whole first wave of people, like, he's still
Yeah,
gonna
do you
bear
how do you
this.
replace 7 children or 9 children or whatever they were?
Yeah, and I
Like,
and I mean, I
yeah,
have so many like issues about all of this anyway. Like, I have my own personal baggage with this, but we are talking about this from what it can teach us as far as crafting a story, right, Tina?
right. And the thing that I noticed is there's a couple of places where there's prose, but a
Hmm.
lot of it is poetry.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
all the conversations are in poetic in nature. Like, they're laid out like a poem.
And I think that that's why it is so ecclesiastical to me also. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because when you
because
read through,
Ecclesiastes really is a poem also.
yeah, like meaningless, meaningless, blah, 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 which is so funny because I randomly think like friends, Romans, countrymen, or, to be or not to be. Like, I mean, it very much is like an oration that you would think that an actor would deliver as a monologue on the stage.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Oh man, like, see, my eyes just fell on, God's response to Job. Hath the rain a father, or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Like, wow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
God's clapback is very much just line after line of amazing imagery and poetry. I would agree with you.
Yeah. And so like it starts out with like Job. You could argue the beginning starts out with Job in his natural world, in his normal world before everything's upended. You know, he's happy, he's rich, he's a good man. Everything's going great for Job. Um
Yeah.
and and then the devil comes along and has this argument with God about saying that Job is only faithful because everything's going well for him. And so I don't know, would that be the catalyst?
Satan
Inciting
answered the
incident?
Lord, yeah, and said, "Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast thou made a hedge around him and around his house and around everything he has on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thy hand now and touch all he has, and he will curse you to your face," right? And so yeah, I mean, I guess this conversation, it happens really early on. This is chapter 1.
Yeah.
And really, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 verses, 5 verses. Like, Job is great. And what it says about him is that he was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil.
Yeah.
And let me just pause right here to say, whenever someone is going through stuff and someone else says, "Remember Job," I think to myself, we're not talking to somebody who's perfect and upright and who eschews evil. You know what I mean? And so this is like kind of my first major beef with this story is it's like, is it presumptuous of you to think that when you're being tested, oh, I should remember Job? Because it's like, well, can you say that you're perfect and upright? Do you have thoughts about that?
Well, we might not be able to say that we're perfect and upright. Now I'm a different denomination than you are, and so I have some different theological ideas about holiness.
Got
And
it.
so to me holiness is not being perfect. To me holiness that a professor at my daughter's college made this statement. Perhaps holiness is nothing more than having a humble and repentant heart.
Hmm.
And so like you have the humility of knowing, oh, I just messed up, and immediate repentance. Because when you repent, then that gets erased. And so now
Yeah.
you're in a state of holiness.
And I guess if you eschew evil, that's also you're self-reflective and able
Hmm.
to say when you were wrong and repentant. And
Right.
so then you would be like, well, sure, you're like Job.
Well, and I wouldn't say I'm like Job. I would say if Job was perfect and this could still happen to him, then who am I
Mm.
to say this shouldn't happen to me?
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Jesus Christ, like, look at
Exactly.
all what happened
He
there.
really was perfect.
So, do you think that like that's very interesting? Like, is that how you would like summarize the lesson, like for you? Because I talked about how I look at this, and I'm just like, ugh, it's
To me, it was like, you- um, there was nothing that Job did that caused all of this to happen to him. As a matter of fact, the fact that he was so good and upright and eschewed evil and was faithful was actually the reason. Because if he hadn't been, this Satan wouldn't have gone to God and said, "Well, he's only faithful because you've blessed him."
yeah. And so it's almost like, so here's the question: was it you that I was talking to who was like, and then in the end, when Job does finally curse God, but I don't remember reading it that way. Was that you or was that someone
No, it's at
else?
me.
Because I didn't think that he ever did kind of cave. I think
He
that toward
caves a
the
little bit, but it wasn't that he cursed God, but just that he wished he was dead and never been born, and like because his friends start to influence his thinking.
yeah, why do those people okay, so let's talk about this. Here they come with all their advice. Okay, so first
Well,
of
first
all,
of all, let's start with his wife.
yeah, right. Okay. So, but wait. So Job is living his normal life, and then here comes the first inciting incident. Like the whole catalyst for this whole story is God and Satan having a discussion about whether Job would curse God if God did not protect him from bad things happening, right?
Right.
And so then bad things happen, like huge
Yeah,
bad.
everything went.
All his kids
All his
die.
kids dead, all his cattle, all his sheep,
And so
everything.
now he's like broke and bereft, and all he's got is this wife. And is his wife a comfort to him in his
No.
time? No.
Well,
Now,
that's why
granted,
he didn't take the wife.
listen, I was really irritated with this wife, but
I
she
feel
was
like if
also
she
suffering. You know
I
what I'm
feel like
saying?
if she would have said the right thing and been a comfort to him, that she would have been dead too. What?
Oh my gosh, because leaving her alive was actually punishing him more?
That's
Tina!
let that be a lesson to me when I want to get sharpish with my husband.
Better to be slain with the oxen. That's amazing, Tina. I'd not ever had that perspective before. Okay, so he's left with his wife, which is, we're arguing, maybe a part of the whole suffering
Because
that
she's
he's
like
enduring.
just tell him, well, you should just curse God and die. Like,
Gosh, that's really, oh boy, that really speaks to me. Wow, that's huge. Okay, so he's left with this wife, and then here come his friends. And
can we put that in air quotes?
yeah, like frenemies, I just don't even know. And
Yeah.
the problem is this book is 30 whatever chapters long, and
Uh-huh.
I don't have any patience for it. I get into like one or two of these friends being like, well, Job, why didn't you blah 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 blah? And like they keep basically trying to say it's all your fault that this is happening to you.
You must have
You
been done something.
right? Like that's what they're doing, right,
Yeah.
Tina? Because
And
you're
if you will just straighten up and fly right, God will bless you. It's kind of like the prosperity gospel. And I
wow.
hate to get in too deep into theology on this podcast because we try to be inclusive of all Christians, but God never promised us to be rich and famous. And you know what I'm saying? Like there are preachers out there that say if you will be faithful to God, you can have money and houses and cars and blessings, and it's
I'm
just
a,
not true.
yeah, I'm only quiet because my brain is dancing around, dancing this fine line of tipping into theology in one direction or another.
Right.
But you always are tempted. Like I have conversations to people when I'm really suffering, and they want to say, no, all of this suffering is coming from the devil and it isn't coming from God. But it's like then you get into talk about what he permits, and and that is really the Job experience, isn't it? Is
Mhm.
like why is this happening to me? Is But I
Mhm.
don't think that Job is asking that. It's almost like the friends are what happens in our own heads when
Yeah.
something bad is happening to us. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. I
Like
think
these
it
are the
runs the
questions that
gamut.
come up. Yeah.
Like all of the arguments from everybody run the gamut of all the questions that we have in our own minds when we're suffering and when bad things are happening.
Yes, because we want to know, why is this happening to me? Is this something that I did to bring this upon myself?
Mhm.
And all of those things that they say. That's really fascinating. But again, we're trying to talk about this as a story structure. So these are then in this story, who
Mhm.
is like the antagonist? Because so like, arguably the devil,
The devil,
arguably.
but then he has his minions that don't even realize that they're doing his work,
And so
who
you
are
would
over
say,
here discouraging him and trying to tell him it's his fault and giving him really bad advice.
okay, and see, this is why I have no patience for these people. What are they hoping will happen? Like, what do they want Job to do? Like,
Mhm.
wash your face and be cheerful again? Like, I don't even get it.
Yeah.
What are they adding to him? And why doesn't he send them away? Okay, but those are like critical points. Like if I'm the reviewer of this story,
Right.
just send them away. But then I guess there would be no story.
And then if you're looking at it from a story structure point of view, you really can't say like this is a hero's journey. You really can't say this is a romance. It's not a mystery. It's like so that's why I said the thing about genre. There is definitely character development because he
Yes.
goes through all these internal questions and that are being thrown at him and he's processing them and he's going through this suffering and he comes out the other end a changed person.
Yeah, there is a story arc, but it is a short story too. So it could just very well be because, like, when we talk about the story of the birth of Christ, that is very much a novel. Like, because remember, we couldn't even agree on where it started. Like, we could have started once upon a time in the Garden of Eden. You know what I mean? And so that
Mhm.
is like a novel, but this story only has enough content to work in a short format. So I think that's why the genre is a little trickier.
Right, so
Um,
then then you would talk about a shattering moment.
I think when God shows up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and he's like, "Well, who are you? Did you put the stars in the sky? Like, do you cause the wind to blow and the tides to go in and out?" And, like, I'm totally, like, improvising right now. I don't know
I
if he
know,
even said
yeah,
all that.
right. The one
But
that I remember is, "Can you hook Leviathan from the sea?" Like,
yeah, like, here I am, and I am all powerful, and you can't even think at the level that I can think at.
yeah.
Like, he sees the whole picture, and he knows the whole story, and he realizes that our lives are like a little blip. And so what we think of as the suffering that lasts forever, he sees as a little pinprick.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's just his perspective comes in and it changes the whole thing.
Yeah, and, again, as someone who would maybe be critiquing is like, is there gonna be a part 2 to this? Are you gonna go on with this story? Because honestly, it's like, I know that he sends, all of these friends away and tells them to go make these sacrifices, and Job will pray for you and, like, kind of all of this stuff, but it's almost like, well, then I guess Job is kind of, I mean, I guess, are they repentant? Are they still the same nasty people after?
Well, in God forgives them. Like, he's mad at the friends for their bad advice. God is, but Job sticks up for them and he forgives them. And then in I have an outline in my study Bible,
Yeah.
and the last 3 entries are Job's repentance, God's verdict, and Job's restoration. So, like, there's repentance and restoration at the end. What did Job have to repent for? Probably not his faith wavered. Like, he was perfect and upright and all that when he started, but there was some wavering going on throughout the course of these conversations, like when he said that he wished he'd never been born and that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing that's the repentance that he needed to do. But there's the character development. There's the arc where he comes out the other end. And I think about Kurt Vonnegut's thing where he graphs stories,
Mhm.
and he's really funny. It's a very funny video if you haven't seen
Mhm.
it. But he says, boy starts down here and everything's bad, and then he finds true love, and then he loses it, and so I think Job's graph would be he's up here, like
Mhm.
at the pinnacle, and then boom, he loses everything, and he wallows, and then he goes down a little more, and then he comes up again. So it's almost like
Yeah,
a graph like that.
but then arguably he's never the same, or is
Right,
he
he'd be higher.
higher?
He'd have to be higher at the end, but not
Even though
a
he's
lot higher
endured?
because he's lost his
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm kind of in the place now where and this was for my what's next, but I'm just gonna say it. My youngest child is moving out tomorrow.
Mhm.
And we're going up north. We're moving him up north. He's moving in with his brother. All my children and grandchildren are going to be in one place at one time tomorrow.
For the last time for who knows how long,
And it's
right?
a bittersweet kind of thing.
Yeah.
I told him, like let's all go out to eat while we're there so that we can all like have a meal together. But like my house is just not going to have any children living in it.
Yeah.
And it's like that's bittersweet too. Like I'm making my son. Well, I'll save it for the what's next, so I have something to say. But
But your point is you're sort of suffering in this particular way, even though you're
right,
not losing a child, you are losing them in a particular way.
right, and because I have attachment disorder, it's kind of acute for me, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense. Like the biggest fear for somebody with what I have is this, but that you'll be abandoned. And it's
Mhm.
kind of a form of abandonment, even though that was the goal all along. Like, the goal of parenting is to get your kid to a place where they can go off on their own and be independent.
Mhm.
But then that's also my greatest fear, you know, that
Mhm.
they'll leave me and go off and be independent. And so, like, to me, he has this understanding of who God is now, a little bit more than he did before, but he's also got the loss of his children. So that's hard for me, like, to know where he would be on that graph.
Yeah, and this is again like why you might beg for the sequel, right? Because
Mhm.
you wonder if in the quiet moments he doesn't think about the children that he lost and still experience grief and sadness and kind of all of this. Because God not only restores him, but God makes him like more wealthy than he was before. And,
Mhm.
and so you almost kind of wonder if they balance each other out. I don't know. I mean, if you get an eternal perspective, it's possible that you start to see those kind of losses in a different way as well. And
Mhm.
so maybe if we can
Like,
get a
if we
Job
could
like,
see where his children were, are they in heaven with God, and is he gonna see them again? That changes that changes the whole thing and if they weren't in heaven.
well, and I think that it's a matter of having a right focus, like a candle will flicker. And I think that like there are times when you can be like, God knows everything and I trust God and I'm like grooving along because I've got everything that I need. I may not have everything that I want. And you could be having a really good day that way. And then you could be having a day where it's just like, I don't know why God is letting me suffer like this, blah, 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 blah. It's almost like like I said, we flicker between being Job's friend and being Job. And so I think that this story is very much useful in that way, that
Yeah,
it's a comfort to me to think of it as your own internal struggle when you are dealing with things that are unpleasant, suffering in the worldly material sense, right?
right.
Because that's what all of this suffering is. This is all material suffering. This is all a loss of goods. This is all a loss of,
Yeah.
the human loss. Now that's a little bit tragic, but materially, I'm saying.
But if you look at the culture, like, because I always like to go back and look at, like, the culture and like, I have an archaeological study Bible, so that'll tell
Mm,
you, like, what I like to go look at. And in that culture, and still in Middle Eastern culture today, children were considered possessions.
mm.
Now, that's not to say there wasn't relationship there, but that was the overall wives and children were considered the possessions of the male.
So
And so
this is meant to be about your worldly riches, isn't it?
that's why, like, I kind of think maybe it's coming from that perspective. Like, he lost everything that was, yeah.
Yeah, because we are very attached to our children, you're saying, in possibly a way that they would not have been.
And as women too, I think we are even more attached to our children.
Hmm.
Because my husband is having a completely different um experience right now.
Yeah, right.
Like, he's kind of like, it's about time. Like,
Yeah. Buying
and
less hot dogs and laundry soap, right?
yeah,
Like,
like, I took my son, like, our bank doesn't have a branch in the city he's moving to. So I took him to somewhere to open a new bank account that has a branch like a block away from where he's going to be living. And that it was all windows. Like, it was just one big wall of windows, and the office he was in starting his new account was like right in front of me. I was parked looking through the window watching him, and I
mm,
texted my husband and I said, I'm like, this is weird. And he's like, answer to me in the text was, it's about time. And my answer to him was, but I'm sad.
yeah.
Like, it
Both
makes me
things can be
sad.
true, right? Both
Yeah.
things can be true.
I mean, he's only
Well,
19. A lot of people stay with their parents a lot older than that.
yeah, it's a very different kind of economy right now, and
Yeah.
multi-generational households are really sometimes the only thing that financially makes sense. But I want to get back to Job because one thing you also brought up was that Job forgave his friends. And immediately I thought of like how there is a picture of a mediator and someone restoring others to God by pleading for them. And I think it's interesting that the Christ narrative is patterned, like there are a lot of stories in the Old Testament that are modeled after this. Like, if there is at least 5 righteous men, Lord, would you spare them? Do you know what I mean? And I feel like over and over again, there's one that God will accept their apology on behalf of others. And then God is more tenderhearted to the others because of what the one does. And I just think that that's very interesting in the story.
And in the dialogue, somewhere in here, and it's like you said, it's like over 30 chapters long, so I don't know where it is. But Job also believed that there was a mediator for him in heaven.
Interesting.
And so that was like a pointing forward to Christ kind of thing that you can find all throughout the Old Testament. Like almost everything in the Old Testament points to Christ.
Nice.
So I thought that was really interesting. But as a story, it's definitely a character arc. And I think you're right. It's a short story. It's like one moment in time. There's a shattering moment. There's a catalyst or a inciting incident.
And and then there's a really satisfying ending.
Yeah.
You know,
resolution. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do you think are we meant to learn? Because I feel like, well, I have cursed God in my bleakest, most bitter hours. So this story has no application to me. So what would you say to that?
I wouldn't say it doesn't have an application to you, because I think that the temptation is there for anyone going through these hard times. And so we can skip through all the arguments of his friends and go straight to the words of God at the end.
Yeah.
Whether we cursed God or not. And there's repentance and there's redemption for everybody, no matter what. And whether that means that everything you lost will be redeemed or whether your soul will be redeemed, both of those things are good news.
Absolutely. What a very nice way to wrap up the segment, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do.
All righty. Well, Tina, it looks like we're talking to an empty room.
Yeah,
but normally
I don't know if I did something wrong with the link. I hope not.
It's possible that everybody like Jen has a lot going on for New Year's Adam and just can't join us live today.
Right. But, I know that several people had stuff going on that we normally talk to. So
yeah, well, if you are listening later, or just if you're new to the podcast, probably I should fill you in on what's going on. We have talked about the topic, and now we're transitioning into the portion of the show called the feeding of the backs. And this is where we give each other positive feedback only about a piece that we have written. Why positive only? Well, because we wrote this right before the show. We set a timer for 15 minutes and we write to a prompt, and then we read it live on the air without doing any editing whatsoever. And the point of this is basically just to encourage you to also be a writer and to also try to write a little bit of something every day if you can. And we hope that you will take the challenge and write to this prompt for 15 minutes yourself, and then share what you've written in our Facebook group and on your own blog or on your own Twitter page or somewhere, because you are a writer. Be a writer and show the world that you're a writer, and show people what your process is like. It could be a very good way to anchor loyal readers to yourself. Wouldn't you agree, Tina?
Yes.
All righty. So what is our prompt for today, and what did you write?
Well, it's 5 words. And the 5 words. Oh, I was about to say prompt, but that prompt,
prompt is one of the 5 words. Not.
No, that's just my thing to tell me that's the prompt. Volcano, rent, regard, manage, and contain. So my immediate thought when I saw those words were, who could I throw into a volcano?
I know, you said that and I was like, that is so funny, because I admit, I typically it'll be Friday morning that I will open my document and I put the words in there, and usually one word grabs me, and then it's like, okay, this is what I'm gonna write, kind of thing. And it was not, who am I going to throw into a volcano? So it's just so awesome to have the same prompt and to get such different
Mhm.
output. So let's
So
hear what you wrote.
okay, well, it didn't turn out how I thought. I didn't actually throw anyone into the volcano,
All
but,
right.
the heat was oppressive. Sweat dripped down Sarah's forehead into her eyes, the salt stinging. She swiped at it, but the material of her protective gloves and sleeves were the opposite of absorbent. What she needed was one of those pink terry cloth headbands her uncle used to wear mowing the lawn in the summer. They used to laugh and giggle behind their hands at him out there in his white wife beater, khaki shorts, and knee high socks with the red stripes at the top. An icon of fashion for sure. What she wouldn't give to be mowing the lawn in that outfit instead of making her way down the steep slope leading into the volcano. If she did manage to make it to the bottom without melting, that's when the real work would begin. Joe was injured, but nobody knew the details. His radio was mostly static, with the odd word coming through. They hadn't trained her for this in EMT school. She'd learned to contain a triage tent in a pandemic outbreak. She knew how to use the jaws of life to extricate a victim from a smashed vehicle. She knew how to do CPR and use a defibrillator, but rescuing a man who fell into a volcano, that hadn't been in the syllabus. Sarah took a deep breath, grateful for the oxygen tank with air that didn't burn her lungs. The glowing red lava spat a ball of fire into the air. Her foot slipped. She reached for the glassy black cliff to her left, but there was nothing to grab onto. She was going to fall into the lava. The heat of panic rushed into her face, adding to the outer heat of the atmosphere. Her mind went blank as she anticipated the moment she'd sink into hell and melt into nothing. Firm hands grabbed her from behind. Got you, Frank said, his voice canny and distant through his respirator. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief, then immediately wondered why her life hadn't flashed before her eyes. Isn't that what they said was supposed to happen? She began to move slowly downward again, trying to focus on the task at hand. Joe needed their help. This is what she'd signed up for. This was the sacrifice required of a first responder. This had been her dream, and she was going to save this man who'd fallen into a volcano, and bragging rights would be hers. But regardless of the outcome, when this shift was over, she was seriously considering finding a cabin to rent on top of a glacier somewhere.
That's the end.
That's it.
Yeah, you said perfect timing when the timer went off. Yes. I mean, this completely like chapter 3 or whatever, like edge
Yeah.
to end. Very good. Yeah. I appreciated that. And very nice that Frank saves the day. So
Yeah.
is Frank an older grandfatherly type, or is Frank her age, or what were you
I
thinking
have
was
no
happening?
idea.
All right. So you
He's
didn't
just her
have
partner. The
gotcha,
two of
gotcha,
them were
gotcha.
going down there to save Joe.
Yeah, because she's very much was not like swooning
Right.
by being caught by him. She was
No,
very
he
much
just
like,
saved her
all
life.
right, we're back in action. You know what I mean?
I didn't fall into hell. I really wanted to
Yeah.
say something like, this made her like really want to be like make sure she's right with God because she did not want to go to hell.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think the way that you handled it was even better because I feel like alluding to hell without making that, I feel like that would have been very much
Telly.
yeah, like in
Hmm.
your face kind of thing. And I think better to allude that she thought she was going to be in hell, not just physically. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I think it was very much told by showing or by that sentence. Yeah. I really enjoyed that piece. And the details were really good. Also, what was interesting to me was to really think about the actual anatomy of a volcano. Like, as a child, you just somehow kind of think it's like a swimming pool where there's the edge of the volcano and then like there is the lava hole, like you just go oops, and you know you forget that there's going to be like a craggy. And so the fun of picturing that and actually considering, oh yeah, like you could fall into a volcano and not fall into lava, right?
Yeah.
So that was really kind of fun to think about for me. But
It
then
was.
maybe
It
I'm
really helped
more,
me that I've been watching documentaries about volcanoes
have you?
because for part of my input for my novel that I'm writing currently, there's some volcanic activity in it, and so I've been watching these like I've been watching documentaries about earthquakes and volcanoes erupting. Like,
Was volcano a planted sprint word, Tina?
no, honestly. Like, and a lot of times I'll go into the randomwordgenerator.com and
Yeah.
I'll just hit generate to get new words. But I didn't even do that. I just used the words that showed up.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that you had been doing that research because it very much seemed like it had been researched. It was a really good piece. I appreciate you sharing it.
Thanks.
All right, I'm not super thrilled with what I wrote today, and mostly because I kind of feel like it's a meandering ramble. Um, but I got at least two of the words. Yay!
Oh, I didn't even count how many I got.
You and I are not big ones for that. Okay, so here's my story. The water is steaming. I've never seen anything like that. Julia's brow furrowed. Where I come from, that's an indication of volcanic activity. Show me. They stepped out into the mild December morning. There were no hints of trouble from the vociferous as usual animals that frequented the trees surrounding the complex. As they traipsed along the narrow path, Julia's spirits were light in spite of the gravity of James's discovery. See, he said, pointing. When I first saw it, my mind tried to tell me it was just like fog or something, but the water is very warm, too hot to touch. I could only get so close. Julia stood staring at the billowing steam. Did you say anything to Mark? Mark was the groundsman. Will do. I haven't seen him yet today. What do you think he'll say? I don't know, Julia admitted, then fell into silent thought. She was amazed at the lack of panicked fear she was experiencing. It was obvious this news was more distressing to James than it was to her. Could it be that perhaps already having lived through a volcanic event, she was impervious to the threat of one? Was it simply the fact that the last time she'd seen these sorts of signs, she had been a little girl, still ignorant as to how anything at all happened, merely trusting Ma and Dad to make all the decisions, and unable to comprehend the nature of a reality that could turn her mother into a quivering reed of fear and her typically stoic father into a ranting, angry taskmaster? Whatever the reason, Julia found herself split into a creature simply calculating and planning for survival, and an interested observer who she had to admit was impressed. Let's pack up and evacuate, she said, planting her hands on her hips. We'll call Mark on our way out. What about the others? Julia bit her lip. She knew very little about things like how much time this sign was giving them. The memories of her childhood evacuation, like all of her childhood memories, seemed to run through her mind's eye in flashes, which seemed to occur on a sporadic and incomprehensible timeline. We should call the geologists first, she said. The observer did not like how tentative this decision sounded, so she repeated herself, then turned and moved efficiently back toward the apartment. Does this mean we're not going to give them the rent money? James's voice asked behind her. She did not answer. A wave of guilt washed over her, hot as the spring, but the observer chided her. They'd fallen behind only a month ago. How could they have known about the volcano's awakening? When we get back, she said, but even as her hand touched the handle on the red door of their unit, she knew they would never be back. That's that.
That's really interesting.
I'm glad you think so.
My mind is just like spinning right now.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, because like, are they on Earth? Are they on another planet? Like, is this post-apocalyptic? Has like Earth completely just gone bonkers? Like, what's going on? Like, my mind wants to know. It's just so intriguing to me.
I appreciate that. What really inspired this was, oddly enough, a TikTok of a guy who was panicking because the water around wherever he was at was doing this boiling thing. And he was like, what does this mean? And people in the comments were like, that is a sign of volcanic activity. And it was like, wow, because you kind of wonder, well, what's going to happen? And what does this mean? And and where was he and all of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when I saw volcano, I was like, yes, I will write like there. And then it just kind of like took off from there. And it's interesting that you have those questions because like to me, it was about this Julia person and like her experiences and stuff. And I love that because right now in my other book, I am working harder to incorporate more of the world building components so that people like you can be satisfied. because those questions don't occur as readily to me. And I think mostly because, like, well, of course it's all this and that, but if you don't tell the reader will not know.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that we talked about it. I
Yeah.
appreciate your input.
Like I was thinking like Yellowstone, they have those sulfur springs and stuff where
Ah,
like the magma is so close under the ground that you can't even like if you fall in there, you're dead.
yeah,
Like
I've
I
heard
think
of
you just
that.
like you disintegrates you because it's like acid or so some kind of really weird material. And my mind's a blank. I can't remember exactly what it is, but like they have all these signs like don't climb on the railings. You have to stay on the path.
Isn't that interesting that something like that would occur naturally? Like, that's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, where were you when I created the world? Because, you know, having a full understanding of, like, for example, what's at the bottom of that?
Mhm.
Humans will never know.
Right. And one thing I learned when I was that I found really interesting when I was researching volcanoes, the volcanoes of our world release more carbon monoxide into the atmosphere than all of the vehicles on the entire planet combined,
Oh,
like on
wow.
a daily basis because of
That's
the
a lot.
gases that come out of them. And so then like you get times when the volcanoes are more active, then you have even more.
Hmm. Well,
Something to think about.
yeah, for sure. Sure is. Well, I'm really glad that your learner wanted to learn about volcanoes. What you kind of said that you had empty nest syndrome on the horizon for your what's next. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, my son's bedroom is about twice the size of this room.
yeah.
And right now, it's so crowded in this room because I put my granddaughter's bed in here. And
Mm,
then I have all my clothes. Like I have like a couple of like I have a rack with for hanging clothes, and then I have one of those movable closets because
mm-hmm.
there's just not enough room in our bedroom for all my husband's suits and everything. And because he's a
Mm-hmm.
pastor,
Yeah.
and people give him like people die, and then they got call up my husband. You want these suits? I've I don't know how many times that's happened, but we went to this one lady's house. Her husband had been a pastor that had passed away, and she had an entire basement of just suits hanging on these racks.
Wow.
So my husband has a
Wow.
lot of stuff, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And so like there's just not a lot of room in here and it's so cluttered right now. It's hard for me to even think in here. So I have all this stuff saved in my cart on Amazon. Curtains and wallpaper and stuff to put on the walls and an L-shaped desk and 2 lamps and something else and a rug. And I'm gonna get some light green paint because I was reading that light green is a really good color for creativity.
Mm.
And I'm because right now the walls are pineapple upside down cake. So I have like all these plans. I've measured all the windows. I've measured the dimensions of the room. Like he's moving out tomorrow. All my stuff's if I hit the button to buy it, will be here next weekend. Like so I'm gonna set up this office and hopefully I can be more productive. There won't be as
Yeah.
many like I just get so distracted in here. It's really been a struggle.
Well, and then once you're out of there will be room for a second little bed or maybe a
Right.
set of bunk beds,
Well, I
right?
have a, pack and play for the baby that's in the hallway right now because we
Yeah.
have nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
So, like, where I am sitting right now is where the pack and play is gonna go.
Oh, how wonderful.
So,
Well, it's so interesting. Life just is forever changing and different. And so it's a bittersweet thing that you're becoming an empty nester because your office is getting an upgrade. How about that?
yeah, I'm getting a whole new office and a whole new desk, and I'm hoping that, it'll be more conducive to me to working. Because I've been working in the living room on my laptop,
You
and
mean your
here
day job?
my writing,
Oh, okay.
um, and I keep falling asleep
Oh, no.
because the chair's too comfortable. Like, I'll be writing and I'll wake up and there'll be like 20,000 Z's in my manuscript.
That is hilarious. Author nap.
Yeah, fall
Yeah.
asleep with my fingers on the keyboard. I
Oh my
just
goodness.
Yeah, and I have that same problem with my job that I get paid for, so I'm gonna have to find out another place to work. Like,
Well,
if I get this new desk, my new desk is gonna be for writing, and I'm gonna use this one for my job, I think,
oh, that's a good
so that I'm in a
plan.
different spot, um, because yeah, I can't be falling asleep at work. They just gave me a significant raise, and I think they're gonna be a lot pickier now
Well, I would think
with the
so.
quality
Yeah.
of my work. Can't
Well,
fall
it
asleep
sounds
while
like
working.
you've got your eye toward the future. So hopefully
Yep,
you'll have some interesting things to report on our next episode, which is like what each of us has planned for our writing career in the new year. Kind of
yep,
a resolutions kind of episode, eh?
yeah,
All right. Well, what's next for me is I plan to continue with my productivity sprints. We affectionately refer to this as office hours because these are if writing is a business, well, what are your office hours that you're going to maintain? And for me, that is 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. And again, I welcome anybody to come and just use those 20-minute sprints to be productive in any kind of way. One author friend was in there and she just used it to do a little bit of housekeeping because anything for 20 minutes is going to add up. So come and don't feel like you necessarily have to be writing the whole time. Just come to be company and fellowship for the others who show up. That is my what's next. And also, I have to figure out like, what am I doing? Because I've decided to look at the writing as a hobby and less of a career and more of a artistry. And it makes me wonder, what am I doing about like my website? Do I want to continue with author newsletters? Like I have so many decisions to make. And I've
yeah.
been putting off and putting off even really giving it any serious thought. And so I'm going to maybe have to have that figured out, right? So that I can talk intelligently about it on Friday. And so that's kind of I'm gonna put my intentions in that direction.
Right. Well, at least be thinking about like maybe the pros and cons of each thing, or what um their options are, and then we can talk through it even on the episode. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to have a decision made by the episode.
Well, that would be helpful. Yeah, I mean that's what friends are for.
Yep.
All right. And so I think that wraps up for this week. Don't you, Tina? You got anything more to say?
Not about the podcast. We want to talk about grandbabies. I could go
Oh.
on and on and on, but
All
I don't
right.
want to
Well,
bore anybody.
in that case, that concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. And until next week, may your pen be prolific, your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye. Oh, I have to end it, don't I?